The episode starts in a battlefield where we meet a villainous man with purple aura flowing around him, against a heroic guy known as the Great Hero who is holding a sword and a small pebble. The villain man is holding a massive rock with his purple aura and throws it towards his enemy. The Great Hero throws the pebble with full force and manages to counteract the force of the massive rock with the immense power that the rock was thrown at. After that, they draw their swords and face each other for a fight. They charge at each other with full power and have an intense fight which ends with a scene of the battlefield. Then both of them are shown barely standing and fighting with the last bit of energy that they have, and both of them stab each other in the body, resulting in both of them falling on the ground and bleeding. The heroic guy seems to be happy when he dies and say it's finally over. It cuts to a scene of a castle-like building and a bunch of teenagers in similar uniforms walking and greeting each other. A boy in a black and white uniform, which is different from the blue and white uniform everyone is wearing, starts talking about how excited he is to live life as an ordinary person. The castle-like building seems to be a school, and the boy is walking and greeting everyone as he is very excited to make new friends. He introduces himself as Blade to all the other students. But then suddenly comes the Empress, the top student in the school. Everyone seems scared of her, but Blade goes up to her and introduces himself in the same excited manner that he did to everyone else. But the Empress seems upset, and the students at the back try to explain to her that he is a new student. Blade says that he does not care about being a hero but only to make friends, which upsets the Empress. Blade then asks Empress to take him to the headmaster's office, and she takes him there. They enter the big beautiful office where the headmaster is sitting behind his table with a smirk on his face. But the headmaster seems to have changed. The Empress panics and bows before the new headmaster in shock. Blade starts talking to him, but then the Empress stops him and apologizes on his behalf to the new headmaster, which is the king. The king asks the Empress to leave him and Blade alone together and tells Blade to regain his powers as a hero. It seems like Blade and the king know each other. Blade refuses to regain his powers and wants to live a normal life. It seems like that Blade was the great hero from the beginning, and the king believes that the great hero has been resurrected in Blade. Afterwards, Blade meets up with the Empress in the advanced training session, where he manages to impress the Empress with his extraordinary powers and sword skills, which leaves the Empress in absolute shock. This makes the Empress suspicious of Blade as he is so powerful, but Blade panics and tells everyone that he is just an ordinary guy. During lunch, Blade tells the Empress that they are friends, which makes her happy. Later in her bedroom, we get to find out how the Empress laid hands on a demonic sword when she was only 6 years old. And this demon has been trying to take over her but has not succeeded thanks to her resistance. Later on during training, when the other students are sparring with the Empress, everyone notices how she is suddenly acting more aggressive and different. She keeps going until she suddenly drops her sword and falls unconscious, but Blade manages to catch her in time. In the hospital, the doctor tells Blade that she is under a spell. The Empress insists on leaving and after tells Blade to not tell anyone about what the doctor said. Later that night, Blade goes to a futuristic looking room and does some research on the Empress's sword and finds out the truth. He goes to talk to the Empress and she explains everything about the sword to him. He encourages the Empress to fight the demon and take ownership of the sword, which is the only solution to stop the urges of the demon. Blade tells the Empress that he will cut the demon if it manages to take over her and manifest itself through her body. At night, she summons the demon to take ownership of the sword, and the entire place is lit up by the fire from the sword. She enters a new world and meets the demon, and they start fighting until the Empress comes out victorious and in ownership of the sword. The second episode starts off in the advanced level training session, where the Empress tells Blade to go and have an eye on Sophie's training. The Empress noticed that Sophie acted differently around Blade as she introduced herself without anyone asking her, so the Empress thought he would be suited to watch over her training and for them to get to know each other. Blade goes over and talks to Sophie. He tells her that he wants to help her improve her sword skills since she has never used a sword before and fights barehand. Sophie was in doubt at first as she has been fighting barehand her whole life, but she finally agreed to let Blade teach her how to master sword skills. As Blade was about to start teaching Sophie about swords, the training session ended. But both of them decided to continue and Sophie started training with Blade's sword while supervised her training. Sophie and Blade practice until sunset, and by then Sophie has mastered the sword and manages to cut through the enchanted metal armor easily. Blade is surprised by how fast Sophie has managed to learn sword skills. Sophie asks Blade if she can now beat the Empress since she mastered how to use a sword now. Sophie suddenly tackles Blade down and mounts on him. She gets close to him and tells him that she wants to learn something new from him tomorrow. Blade gladly accepts. The next morning, Blade is at the king's office talking to him about how school is going. Blade seems to have a grumpy attitude when talking to the king about his school life and his new friends. He tells the king that he has several friends now, but he has been. The king seems a bit sad when he heard that Blade has taken an interest in Sophie. The king starts talking about the artificial Great Hero Project. The king informs Blade about a group possessing ancient knowledge that was lost. This group selected a human as a basis and endeavored to bestow upon her the powers of the esteemed hero artificially. They replicated the basis to conduct numerous experiments and modifications in order to create an artificial great hero. Sophie's true identity is Sophisha Femto. She represents the 12th replica of the original human named Sophisha. Being an experimental subject, she endured being treated as an object for a prolonged period of time. The king took her under his wing, and Sophie regarded every statement directed towards her as a command. Blade runs out of the office and starts feeling guilty because Sophie was robbed of an ordinary life to create an artificial copy of the great hero, Blade. Now Blade wants to make sure that Sophie gets back her ordinary life as a normal human, as he feels that it's his fault and his existence that caused her tragic life. But Blade himself doesn't know what a normal life seems like. So Blade starts to go around asking different people what the normal life of a young person like Sophie and himself seems like. Everyone gives different answers, and Blade goes into a cycle of questioning people's answers. This keeps going until he realizes he must take Sophie on a date. Sophie agrees to go on a date with Blade, but now the Empress knows about their date and decides to stalk them with 2 other girls to figure out what is happening. Sophie and Blade meet up and start their date off. The Empress gets upset that Blade and Sophie are walking arm in arm. Blade and Sophie go to many different places and spend time together while the Empress and her friends are stalking them everywhere they go. The Empress is sad that they are having a great time together. Blade and Sophie spend time together until night. When they are sitting by a fountain by themselves, Sophie decides to tell Blade the truth about herself since they are friends now and need to be honest with each other. Sophie tells Blade that she is not a normal person and she is an experimental subject who was freed by the king. Sophie shows Blade her powers and tells him she doesn't have full control over her artificial great hero powers. Blade also decides to tell Sophie that he is the great hero and opens up to her about his feelings when he can't save everyone and how he didn't ask to be the great hero. Sophie comforts Blade and helps him move on from his past. They hold hands and promise each other to keep these secrets to themselves.